Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar on multiplot output sheets in RoadEng. I'm Erin, your resident webinar host here at Softtree, and with me today is Diego Otero. He is one of our support team members, and he is going to be stepping us through our first of this kind follow along learning webinar. So what that means, this is not a one-way content dump. We want you to actually follow along. So we're going to be kind of going with a slightly different format than we usually do. In today's webinar, I'm going to start by attempting to introduce some key concepts. Then I'm going to pass it over to Diego. He's going to first demonstrate, and then he's going to do it a second time and allow you to follow along and practice. So what you're going to need for today's webinar, first off, you are going to need RoadEng version 11 installed and ready to go on your computer. I did send a link to all of our participants yesterday with a link to the file package we're going to be using. So if you haven't had a chance to download that, check your email. There should be one from myself, Erin Wozni, and that file package is what we're going to be working with today in the webinar and encouraging you to follow along. As usual, if you have any questions about multiplot, or if you've got a question about a step that we've just done, feel free to open up that question section of your GoToWebinar panel, type it in, and we're going to tackle it throughout the course of the webinar. Other kind of housekeeping type items, I highly recommend, if you've got the opportunity to work with multiple monitors, having the webinar on one monitor and then having the software available on your additional monitor as we go through it together. That's going to allow you to, work a little bit more dynamically. And with that, let's get into the content. So first, again, I'm introducing. So let's start by just talking about what is multiplot. So multiplot is a tool in RoadEng that is going to allow you to create and manage your construction documentation or your output that you might be sharing with someone. And really, it is a paper representation of a design. So in today's example, our design is already completed, and we're just going to be working on what those output sheets look like. A few kind of big notes here. So multiplot allows you to work with a whole bunch of different types of views. These are called subviews. The plan, the profile, construction, cross-section, and you can control all of those within this single interface. And the other big one, which you're going to hear me mention a couple times today, but really everything in multiplot is dynamically connected back to your design. So it's the paper representation, but it is still dynamically connected. That means if you make a change, for example, to one of your alignments, that change is going to be instantly reflected in your multiplot output. So very useful if you end up creating your output sheets, make a change, it's still, already good to go. So a few other key concepts before we move into our first exercise, really, and that's around page types. So multiplot has a bit of a unique organizational structure, which I'm going to talk about on the next slide. But in this organizational structure, we'll often refer to different sort of types of pages. A plan profile is a typical one that we'll work with. A cross-section view is another typical one we'll work with. And then there's other pages, maybe you're putting in a title page, a blank page, perhaps you've got a page that's got just your cross-section, your typical cross-section on it, or even an information page. So all these page types are things that we can build inside of multiplot. But there's one thing that's consistent between all of our page types, and that is our page sizing. So when we set up our multiplot, we are working with a specific size of paper. And in today's webinar, we're going to be setting that to size D. So there's 5 typical sizes, and then you also have the ability to customize that size if there's something unique that you're looking for. Okay, I mentioned we were going to talk a little bit about the unique organizational structure of multiplot. So multiplot has essentially 3 levels to it, and we're going to look at each of those levels in our webinar today. At the highest level, we've got something that we call the book level. And a book is really just the wrapper for everything we've got in multiplot. Our book can occasionally contain elements that are going to be shown on every page. In today's webinar, we're going to look at adding, say, a page border to our book level And something at the book level is going to be shown on every page of our multi-plot. So at the highest level, we've got the book. Our next level from there are chapters. And each chapter essentially represents its own page type. We just looked at those page types. So this could be a plan profile. This could be a cross-section. And those chapters each contain their own pages. So the number of pages is controlled by their pagination settings. We'll talk about that one a little bit later. But this is the sort of the organizational structure. So again, we've got the book, we've got chapters, and each chapter has a finite number of pages that are contained within it. Okay, so that's a little bit on the information for how multi-plot works, the page types, and now we're going to ask you to get ready. I'm going to pass it over to Diego, and we're going to go into our first of 4 exercises. This first one is going to be about opening up a file, opening up the multi-plot, configuring your page size, updating our display settings to make it a little bit easier to work with, and then we're going to look at adding our first element at the book level. So with that, I'm going to pass the screen over to Diego.
Thank you, Erin. Perfect. So this is our files that we received from the email. We need to right-click and extract all. When we extract all, we will be prompted with this dialog. So if we already downloaded them and copy and paste it into the desktop, it will be by default extracted in our desktop. So let's cancel. I'm going to cancel because I already did it. We have this file over here. Let's open it, and we will start by opening multiplot dash start dsnx. This will open our location module. And as Erin said in her introduction, we will assume that this design was completed and it's done. We have our section data table. We have a blank window, and we also have a profile that already was created. But we will go to the bottom left of the screen to open multiplot, this button over here. This will open a blank page basically, and we'll activate this window, this active window. Let's select multiplot, and here's we will have all the tools that will help us to go through the output sheet creation. So first, as Erin said, we have like different levels. We have the book level that will wrap up everything we have below. We have the chapters level that will always be prompt as default, the name, and some pages. We will go to the book level, and let's go to double left click on it so we can access to the multiplot options. We can go to snap to grid, show grid. Let's enable them, and let's set the spacing to 5. I'm going to press OK. And we will also modify our page size. So let's go to page size at the top left of the screen, and let's set to size D, just like that. So I'm going to recap. I'm going back in time. So let's go as we had before. We had page B, and we were in defaults. So again, we go to the bottom left of the screen. Let's select multiplot. This will activate a window. Let's press in multiplot, and let's modify the page size to size D. To select the book level, double click on the blank space. Let's enable snap to grid, show grid, and let's set the spacing to 5. This will help us to have like a reference for snapping some content, such as the subviews that Erin has mentioned, like the plan, the profile, and data and cross sections, as at the rectangle in this case. So for now, we will open this rectangle drop-down list. Let's select rectangle, press OK. We will use it as a border. So let's snap it at the border of this space, just like that. So as Erin commented, these settings will be applied to all the other chapters and pages, so we can confirm that it's happening in our case. And back to Erin.
Okay, thank you, Diego. So we just went through sort of our first exercise, and I can see we've had a few extra people join us. We are working with the multiplot start file from the shared file folder, and we just went and configured our page size. Unfortunately, given the type of webinar we're doing, we can't really go back and repeat a lot of the content, so hopefully you can kind of follow along to the best of your abilities. So in our next section, we're going to look at adding different elements to our multiplot page. And multiplot has a whole bunch of different types of elements that can be added. First off, we have our subviews. Those subviews can be our plan, our profile, our section, or our data window. And then we also have some tables. For example, our horizontal curve table, our vertical curve table, and our template assignment table. And when we add those to a page, in particular for the tables, only the curves, for example, that are being shown on that page will be included in that table. So again, just reiterating the point I made in my initial section, which is everything is dynamically connected. Probably my favorite part of multiplot, and really your design updates throughout all of those subviews I just mentioned are going to be reflected instantly inside of multiplot. There's a few other elements that we're going to look to add today to our multiplot. We did work with a rectangle just now, so that can be used to hold text or to just create a border. And then there's items like a legend, which can be used to show all the different line types that you've got on your page and symbology. We can also add images, scale bars, other terrain files, but today we're just going to look at adding some subviews, tables, and a legend. So as we kind of move through this introduction, because that's really what my job is, to introduce these concepts, probably one of the most complicated concepts, or complex concepts, I should say, in multiplot is this idea of pagination. So if you recall, when we talked about multiplot's organizational structure, we had a book and then we had chapters, and each chapter has a specific number of pages that are included in it. And what controls the number of pages that are included in a chapter is this item called pagination. You can access it by right-clicking on a chapter, selecting the chapter pagination options. And there's 4 options here that you can select. The first of which is a fixed number of stations. So here you can specify, I want 500 stations on my page. And that's what multiplot will attempt to do. The more dynamic and our recommended way to do chapter pagination is by using either the plan profile width, which is if you're working with a plan profile chapter, to use that one. And what that will do is it will look at your scale and then determine the number of stations that should be shown on a page relative to the window size and your scale. And you can account for overlap. So as it generates the pages. So for example, if you've got, in this example here, you can see page 1 is going to show 0 to 685, and then page 2, and sorry, I'm looking at the one on the right. The second page is going to have 10% overlap. So it's actually going to start a little bit earlier, having that overlap with the first page. So using plan profile width on a plan profile page is definitely a good way to go for pagination. Similarly, for cross-section, we have a pagination option called section. And again, this is our recommendation. So instead of choosing a fixed number of stations, if you use section and you have something, for example, like a culvert, and you definitely want to include your cross section that includes your culvert in it, but that might add an extra station outside of the fixed number that you've specified per page. So if you use section, it's going to include every single one of your selected cross sections. And then the last option we have here is something called a single fixed page. And if you're putting in a title block, Single fixed page is definitely the way to go. It's just going to give you the one page. So that's a little bit on pagination. We're going to take a look at that as we look at the plan profile chapter here in a moment. The other concept we're going to take a look at in this next section is the idea of plan view and scrolling. So to explain, the automatic pagination. So when we put a plan view into our multipot, it has automatic pagination that happens. It's going to place the start station on the left in the center, and that you can see that's what it's doing here in this top picture. So in the automatic display of your plan view when you first insert it, it puts the start station on the left and in the center. Now, in this case, our road has a bit of a curve, and that curve is going outside of our view. And that's where something called manual scrolling can be really helpful. Manual scrolling allows you to adjust how that view is being shown. And in this case, we're able to rotate it or move it. So now our start station's down here, and we can see the full curve at the top. So scrolling is a really powerful tool you can use to customize a view. But some warnings. So you can set an entire subview to be manually scrolled across all pages. And really, we recommend using scroll for just a single page. And when you've got just a single page scrolled, or actually a view in general scrolled, we try to display some little icons to tell you what's going on. So when a view is scrolled, you're going to get an icon in the top corner. And if an item is locked as well, you're going to get an icon in the top corner. So it's really useful in multiplot as a general tip to look for the icons in the top corners of the subviews. And no, don't worry, those aren't getting printed. They're just there as a visual reference as you're working through the tool. Okay, so we've introduced pagination, we've introduced the different types of views and items you can add to your multiplot. And we talked a little bit about scrolling, and now we're going to head back to Diego and we are going to actually work through some of those items. So if you are joining us, it's multiplot-start.dsnx from the file folder that we provided. And now we're going to go in, add a planned window, add a profile window, look at how we can work with scales, scrolling, pagination, and then we're going to add a legend and some tables. And don't worry, we're going to break it into small chunks and demonstrate and then let you practice. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Diego.
Thank you, Erin. Okay, so I'm going to show my screen again. Perfect. So we were here, we just created this rectangle for using or for serve as a margin. But now we will go back to our default chapter level and we will add some subviews. In this case, the first one will be the plan. So use the new subview drop-down list to select plan. And let's place it at the top left of the page. Just like that. And let's leave it some room for some other rectangles and legends. And here we will place our profile. Perfect. We can select it, and by double left click on this subview, on this plan subview, we can modify its scale. At this moment, it's 1 to 2,928, but we will make it 1 to 1,000. And press OK. And we can easily notice how we are no longer showing our switchback. So what we are going to do is we have different tools for managing this. As Erin commented, we can scroll, but we will do it at the last. So we will first go to default chapter by right-clicking, and we will modify our chapter pagination options. So we can see that at the moment we have a fixed 1,000 stations per page setting, but now we will change to use a plan or profile width. So we will display all our plan alignment. but we will have an overlap in this case of 10%. Let's press OK. And looks way better, but it's not perfect, so we can scroll as well. So let's select it. We need to select the subview to activate this button. And at the top of the screen, we will go to scroll. Let's disable auto and let's turn this page only. So we won't modify any other pages. I'm going to cancel so I can select the page before I do it. So let's select the page 1. Let's select the subview and scroll again. So this page only, and let's disable auto. Press OK. And apparently nothing has changed, but now we will be able to scroll this plan. And I'm going to do it twice so you guys can follow me. I'm going to delete. So again, let's select the page 1. Let's select the default. Sorry, new subview, and let's press plan 1. Let's place it at the top left of the page. And with pagination options, what we did is we modified from fixed to use plan or profile width with an overlap of 10%. And last, we scroll it. So let's select and scroll. Press the scroll button to turn the auto off, and let's enable this page only tool, just like that. We also modified the scale to 1000. Perfect. I'm going to hold down the Shift key, and I will press the up arrow key. So this will prompt this warning that is your plan subview is set to scroll with the current page station range. Do you want to scroll manually instead? We'll press OK. And now we'll be able to shift it down by holding down the Shift key and pressing the up arrow key, just like that. So this way we will be able to display all our switchback that we couldn't show before. We will also get our profile. So let's select the new subview profile, and let's place it below our plan subview, just like that. At this point, we are not showing any sub windows such as the mask hole or something like that, but we definitely can do it. So I'm going to double left click on the profile. So double left click, and we also need to ensure the vertical scale and horizontal scale, and we will add a sub window. So I'm going to delete the profile again so we can catch me. New subview profile, and let's place it below our plan. And we will give some space at the right and at the bottom of this subview so we can add some title blocks and legends as well. Perfect. So if we remember, we had a horizontal scale of 1 to 1000, and something important to consider is that we should manage or get the same as horizontal scale for the profile as well. So instead of 2000, let's set it to 1000, the same as the plan. And the vertical scale depends on the details you guys want to show. But at this case, I'm going to set to 1000 as well. And now we will go to sub windows. Let's press select, and let's grab this mask hole. by double left click or selecting add, and just like that, press OK. If we select this, we will activate the options button. So let's press up options, and let's enable all these freehold, overhaul, borrow, and waste checkboxes. Press OK twice to apply the changes. And there we are. So now we have a plan profile, and we should be able to add some legends. So that's what we are going to do now. So let's go to the top of the screen, legend. Let's open it. And by double left clicking, we will be able to open the legend subview options properties dialog. So in General tab, I'm going to set the number of columns to 1. So I only want 1 column for these legends. It's good enough for the number of legends of the number of items we have. And I will also modify the items tab. Let's go back. We are creating a plan profile output sheet. That's why we don't need these sections, so we can select them and let's remove them. We can also delete this profile bridge abutment because we don't have any bridge at in this project. So basically it's not necessary. So we select also the plan bridge abutment, remove, and press OK. So now we are ready to place it next to a plan sub view. Just like that. Excellent. So you guys can use the scroll wheel for zooming in to see clearly what's going on with these legends and tables. Now let's grab some tables next to the new subview we were using.
Diego, before you go into adding tables, do you want to repeat the legend just because?
Oh, yeah.
I want to make sure we're going at speed. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, of course. So let's delete it and let's grab it again. So what I did is I went to the top of the screen and selected the legend. And by default, we will have all these items. So what I did is let's apply a double left click to open this dialog where we will have all the settings for the legend. And let's modify the number of columns to 1. And in the items tab, let's remove all the sections. As I said before, considering that we are just creating the plan profile, we don't need these sections. And we also remove the profile bridge abutments, remove, and the plan as well. Plan bridge abutment, remove. Awesome. I press OK. Let's use these points of the rectangle we have for knowing where to place the legend at the right of the plan. And just like that. I hope you guys can follow me. And I'm going to grab some data tables. So let's get the horizontal curves. So left click to select it. And I'm going to place it below my legends. So just like that. Now, although I already selected the rectangle as I would like to have, I can see and I can notice that it's not fitting well with the area I have available. So to fix this, we can go to the settings of the horizontal curve table by double left clicking. So we have this curve table options dialog, and we can set the width. Instead of a fixed 15 millimeters, we can set to auto size. So it will fit all the content inside of the the available rectangle that we created. And I'm going to do it twice. So basically, tables drop-down list, horizontal curves, and let's place it below. Just like that. And double left click on the table to open this dialog, and let's set the width to automatic size. Perfect. We will grab the vertical as well, and it's the same behavior. We will use the same workflow. Double left click, auto size, and okay, perfect. And now we could add some other data tables. For example, we already created a Culverts table that is in a new subview. So let's grab this data one subview. Here's where we have the information of the diameter, the length, and the skew of my culverts. And let's place it below the vertical curves table. Excellent, just like that. I'm going to do it twice. So let's delete it. New sub view, and let's grab this data and let's place it below the vertical curves. Great. And we can also use the rectangles not only for the border of the page, but we can also type some content there if we need to. So I'm going to grab a rectangle. So let's go to the top of the screen to set rectangle, drop down list, and let's set rectangle. And here I want to type the project details or the description of my project. And with these settings at the left of the dialog, we have the way to align the text. So horizontally, let's select center, and as well, and the same settings of center for the vertical alignment. Let's press OK. And we will use all this space we have available at the right of the plan profile. But we will leave some room at the bottom for the coming title blocks that we will add. So for this rectangle, I'm going to do it again. Rectangle drop-down list, rectangle, and we added the project description. It was aligned vertically and horizontally to the center. Press OK. Just like that. And with that, we are pretty much the settings we want for this plan profile, but I'm going with Erin.
Awesome. Thanks, Diego. So we just went through a whole bunch of content. You're looking at, some of the elements you can add to the chapters. And I realize in my introductory content, I did miss a couple key concepts. So I just wanted to reiterate a couple of really good points Diego made there. First off, the multi-plot window behaves very similarly to moving around the plan window or even the 3D window. And you can use your mouse and your roller ball to zoom in and out, as well as if you hold down your roller ball, you're able to sort of manually shift it. So leveraging your mouse to move in and out, really, really useful. The other piece that I wanted to reiterate, and Diego chatted about it, which really is as we start to work with chapters, knowing when you're placing a subview, placing it on the chapter level. So if you place a subview on the chapter level, it's going to appear on all the pages within that chapter. If you place a subview on a page, so you have the page selected as opposed to the chapter level, it's going to just place that subview on the page. So a really key concept that Diego just touched on, and I wanted to reiterate it here. So as we move into our next introductory concept idea, I wanted to talk a little bit about working with chapters more holistically. So Multiplot can contain multiple chapters with different content. That's kind of the premise of what the chapter does. And there's sort of 3 different ways that we can create chapters. The first way, chapters can be created from scratch. And in this case, that's going up to the Multiplot ribbon, selecting Add New, and choosing Blank. And that adds just a totally blank chapter. The next way that you can add a new chapter to your multiplot is by retrieving a chapter layout that you've already made. And a great example of this, you've created an awesome output sheet for one project. Go and save your chapter, and then you can actually add that exact same layout to future chapters and future projects. And then the third method, which we're going to demonstrate in our next content block, is how you can add a chapter via the web library. So the web library, it's up in the Multiplot ribbon. You do need a valid internet connection to do this. It's going to look at your page size. So assuming you're using one of the standard Multiplot page sizes, which is ANSI A through D, you can go and access the web library, and it's going to give you a bunch of different options for pre-made content. So in today's example, I believe we're going to grab cross-section 1 or 2 as our option and show you how to work with that, adding it into your design. The other piece that I'd like to introduce as we get into this next content section is cross-section display. So I touched on it with pagination, but cross-sections are, well, I should say, which cross-sections are included is controlled in the layout and then point types. So you're going to have your cross-section window selected, and when it's selected, you can control the layout. So this can be how like what's the grid? Is it a 4x3? Is there 6 up on a page? You can control that. And then which cross-sections are included is controlled here under point types. And this is a really important concept. If you would like to display your cross sections every 20 meters, using an auto interval point for every 20 meters is going to do that. If you would like to make sure that you also include your culvert insertion points, you can enable that. Beginning of curve, end of curve points, you can enable that. And you'll be able to see in the point type selection dialog how many cross sections you're going to create. So here we've got 12 a page, and we're going to be looking at 59 sections. And then kind of connecting that back to the previous point I made about pagination, it's really important to select section for a cross-section page, because then that's going to automatically ensure that all 59 of these sections are going to be included. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Diego. And in this next section, we're going to demonstrate how to add a chapter from the eLibrary, update your cross-section layout, and then we're going to show you how to copy and paste elements between chapters. In particular, very useful if you've got your title blocks. So with that, back to Diego.
Thank you. So let's select my screen. Excellent. So we were just creating our plan profile. We did some legends and we added some content to some data tables, basically. And now what we are going to do is we will get some cross sections pages. But we could, as simple as adding a new blank page and creating the cross sections through the new subview drop-down list as we did, but now we will show a different workflow that we have available, and we have the Access Web Library. So let's grab some content from there, and let's select the D-size cross-section 1. Let's press OK. This will open a new cross-section chapter with some defaults and some parameters that are already created and predefined. So we can easily notice that we have another border different to the one that we used to have. And this is because it was predefined with this layout. So if we try to select it for deleting, we are not being able to do anything there. And this is because it's a logged item. We have the way to select it and delete it. We will need to edit the logged items before with this checkbox at the top left of the screen, or we can also double left clicking on a white part, on a blank part without any content for opening this multiple options dialog. And let's enable this allow edit of logged items. Press OK. And now we can, by left clicking, selecting the content we want to modify or edit. In this case, I'm going to select it and delete it with the keyboard. So I'm going to do it again. Double left click for opening this dialog. Allow edit of logged items. Okay. Select the border with this text label and remove it with the keyboard. Now we can see that we have cross sections every 20 meters, and that's good for these kind of projects. But something important to consider is that we have some culverts in this project, so we want to display them. So let's select the subview, the cross-section subview, and let's go to layout. And next to all point types, let's press the plus button. And let's double click on culvert insertion points. So double click, press OK twice to apply the changes. And now we have our cross sections at the specific stations where we are inserting culverts. And there's another settings that we need to consider is that, for example, if we go to the cross section chapter, by right click, chapter pagination options, we need to check that we are using the sections of all the layouts that we selected. That's something to consider. And now let's grab these title blocks and let's copy paste for the plan profile. So by dragging and creating a rectangle around them, I'm just selecting all of them, right click and copy. And right click and paste. Just like that. I'm going to do it twice so you can follow me. So let's drag a rectangle around these title blocks. Right click, copy, and let's go to default chapter. Right click, paste. And I will also align it to the same border, just like that. Something to consider is that typically these kind of title blocks, we don't want to move them anymore. So while we are working with plan profile and other type of content, we may be able to move them by mistake. If we don't want to, we can select them, select the items we want to lock the position, and press locked position at the top right of the corner of the screen. So we can see this icon over here. It means that this item won't be moved anymore. If we would like to move it later in the future, we can edit the locked items again. And yeah, we'll be able to unlock them.
Diego, before you go a bit further, we have a question in the chat here. Can you please show how to add the culvert sections again?
Oh yeah, for sure. So let's go to our cross-section chapter and let's select the sub view. And with the layouts button at the top of the screen in the sub view section, let's press layout And in point types, we have the way to tell the software what kind of cross sections we want to print. So let's press the plus button next to all. And we have, by default, we have these auto interval points, but for the culverts, we need to ensure that we marked with this check mark the culvert insertion points. So by double left clicking, we turn them on, just like that. And the other thing to consider is that we need to ensure that we are showing our cross sections in pagination options. Right click on the chapter pagination options, and select the use section. This way, the software will show all the sections that we displayed in the layout settings. Yeah, that's it. And now let's let's go to modify the name of the chapters. In this case, we already created the cross sections. So by right click on the chapter, let's press rename chapter. In this case, this is a cross section. And let's go to the default chapter to type plan profile. Just like that. And with that, I'm going back with Erin.
Awesome. Thanks, Diego. Let me get my screen up here. Perfect. Okay, so our last concept, which is actually going to kind of touch on one of the questions that are in our chat, is really understanding the relationship between main windows and multiplot. So multiplot subwindows and the main windows, as I mentioned, are dynamically linked. They are dynamically linked for everything relating to geometry. Your initial multiplot subview is going to take all of the settings from your main window, but you can change the settings in multiplot to look a little bit different. So multiplot can be updated to have different line types, different visual properties. So again, let me just attempt to reiterate that one. The geometry is dynamically linked, but you can decouple the multiplot window settings from your main window settings. An example of that, which we're going to do in a moment here, is adding display shading into multiplot. If you are, and this is the question in the chat, which is how do I carry my line type changes from the design to multiplot? If you've gone and already modified your multiplot, I would just reinsert that subview into multiplot fresh, which would allow it to happen. The other kind of concept here in terms of understanding the relationship between the main windows and multiplot really is what happens to the plan window. So our plan window in RoadEng always is oriented with north facing up. In multiplot, the orientation is going to change. As we saw, it's important to obviously help you be able to visualize it. So it takes the alignment, attempts to put the leftmost part or the start to the left and centered. And so that rotation happens automatically in multiplot. Of course, as you just saw with Diego, we can scroll it, adjust it if you want north to be north. Or north to be page up, I should say. So in this next steps, we're going to take a quick look at the line work and the different view settings and how we can customize them. And we'll do that in this next section. So our final element, and hopefully everybody's keeping up and keeping along in this first of our kind webinar, we're going to take a look at changing a subview and adding some display shading. So Diego, coming back to you.
Thanks, Erin. Excellent. So we were just creating our cross sections, and we added some blocks, some title blocks. And now what we are going to do is we will display some shading to these plans of view. For that, we can go to the plan options through double left clicking on it. So by double left clicking, we can enter to the plan window options dialog, and we can enable the shading. So let's enable shading, and let's click the plus next to it. So here we have the option not only for applying a shading for a cut and fill, that will be the case we will show in this webinar, but we can also manage to create some different material layers to be displayed on the screen. So we have the way to display the surface that we want to, the subgrade, for example, of the final merge surface, or different code pairs. This is pretty much important if we want to display, for example, the clearing limits of my road. I can through this, or any attribute. If the grade of the road is important to me, I can, for example, auto-generate one with intervals. But at this point, we will select the cuts and fills. We will display these cut and fill zones, and we will change the thickness to 5. And let's click OK twice to apply the changes. And again, by double left click, we open the plan window options. We enable the shading, and we modified and change the thickness to 5 millimeters. Just like that. And with that, I believe that's pretty much the content we wanted to show today.
Awesome. I'm gonna, tackle a few of the questions that are in the chat here. But before we do that, to the audience that's live in our webinar, I'd love to hear from you. How did it go? Did you end up with a similar multiplot to Diego's? How was our speed? We'd love your feedback. So please leverage that question section just to type in your feedback. Let us know how you did. And while you're giving us a little bit of feedback, let's tackle a couple questions. So the first question for you, Diego, is can you add some annotation to a specific cross-section?
Oh, yes, and I'm going to steal so basically we can go to cross sections, and let's go to rectangle. For example, let's select this cross section that we have the culvert here, and let's go to rectangles. And for example, this cross section is in page 3, rectangles. We can see this warning that this will be applied only for this page in this case, and we can see we can type any different content. For example, the diameter of the 300 millimeters, for example. And something important to notice is that despite we have this label over here that is like a green triangle, this won't be appearing or showing up in your PDF. So you will have only this label. It's a way to tell the user that it's a customized label that will be applying only to this page, but won't be print. So yeah, that's the way we can modify it and show these kind of things. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, our next question, and oh my goodness, you guys are filling the chat with feedback. I love it. This is one we actually probably should have included in our core information, Diego. How do you export to PDF? And I should say, I muted you, Diego.
Oh yeah, great, thank you. Yeah, for sure. That's important to tell. How can we print? So we have this path, although we don't have a PDF writer inside of RoadEng, we use the PDF writer of your PC. So first we need to go to when we are happy with our design and our output sheets, we go to File and Printer Setup. And we use, for example, at this point, I'm going with Microsoft Print to PDF, and we switch the paper size to the current. In this case was architecture D-shed. And the orientation, we set the orientation as well. Let's press OK. So that's important to match the same size of the multiplot page to the printer page. And now we can go to, for example, the prints preview, so we can see how it will be printed. And let's go to one of the cross sections we mentioned before. So we can see that, for example, if I zoom in, we have the label over here showing the diameter, but it's not appearing the green triangle, and that's how we can customize the PDF print. And now, last but not least, we go to File, Print, and yeah, that's how we can do it. Hit OK, and we select we browse to select the folder where we want to print our PDF. Yeah.
Goodness, I got distracted replying to all the comments. Okay, let's do a couple more. Your next question, Diego, which actually I feel like I can answer this one, which is there a way to manually scroll the profile subview? And that answer is yes. Very similar workflow, I believe, to the plan window, except for it can only scroll left and right. So you cannot rotate. You cannot rotate your profile. Yeah, Diego's giving us a little example there.
Yeah, basically how it's behaved. We select the profile and we shift and left arrow key, and that's how it works. As Erin commented, it won't scroll up or down. It works for left or right. If you need to fit something vertically, I highly recommend to modify the vertical scale. This way you will ensure you display all your vertical alignment curves and features. Yeah.
Okay, guys, we are, yes, nearly 15 minutes over. There is heaps of questions in the chat. So I think the plan here is we're going to tackle those ones. We're going to give you guys some follow-ups. We might even put together a little FAQ with some of the questions to share with everyone that joined us for the webinar. But first off, thank you to the audience. You guys are our guinea pigs, first ever follow along webinar. We really appreciate you being here with us today, and for everyone who commented and added details in the chat, thank you. Thank you for doing that. If you want to go through this again, or perhaps go through it slower, pause it, look at the steps, the video is going to be up on YouTube sometime in the next 24 hours, and all registrants will receive that video link. We also used our training files. So if you are interested in going through an even more in-depth example of multiplot, we do have a PDF instructions guide that can take you through multiplot at even a greater level of detail, where you can look at customizing cross-section views by station range, having some of them larger, having some of them smaller, as well as some other customizations that can be done. And we'll be sure to send that PDF out with the follow-up as well. So thank you, Diego. Thank you for being the guinea pig for our first ever follow along learning webinar. We hope you had fun. We certainly did creating the content, and we hope to see everyone again at another webinar in the future. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.